I'll start by saying some of you have a printed document that's a white paper. One of the questions that comes up a lot is, well, what kind of capital do I need? What kind of capital is out there? And I'm going to start by saying not all capital is created equal, and you really want to ask people, get advice on the capital that you seek, because I know far too many people that want to race straight down and say, yeah, I want venture capital, I want investors. Be sure you know what you're getting when you do that. This is not, so we can go to the next slide. This is not to suggest that there's a single way to do it. There is anything but a single way to do it. So one of the reasons we went about creating this white paper, one was it was the middle of the pandemic and we had a lot of time on our hands to try to do something, and we wanted to be helpful to people who are starting out, who say, what are no-cost options? What are, I'm really just getting started? What are, okay, I'm kind of in the middle and then further along. And so I worked with a community of leaders from across the country to write this. It needs an update, for sure, because I think it was October of 2020. But it's a really good starting point. And if you don't get a printout, I know we have the link to the PDF as well. So I'll tell you a little about me in a sec. I'm going to run back to the agenda really quick. It made my bullets really ugly. I'll tell you a little about me. And then, more interestingly, tell you a little bit about my own background in investing. Now, I'm not telling you that so you can all go, wow, so you've done a bunch of stuff. It's because I want you to understand that as someone who has done a lot of investing, my advice to you is either never come talk to me to seek investment, or wait as long as humanly possible. And the reason is that, as we'll talk about, having a definition of what your business is, where it's going, that it has definitive traction, all the things that you will hear about and you have probably heard about are also the very sort of negotiating bits that we use as investors to say, well, I'm taking on extra risk because you haven't proven X, Y, or Z, or you have very little sales or whatever. And so I often tell founders, you know what? If you can wait forever to not take outside capital, do that. That's the best option. If you do go to investors, well then understand that there's a difference between smart money and dumb money. And we'll talk a little about that when we get to the last slide. All right, now we're good. So the gist of the slide is I'm old. I spent 15 years my last 15 years before coming to the university, I was in industry working in pharma. I led corporate strategy globally, worked at incubators and accelerators all over the world with VCs, startups, et cetera. Got to see what works. And I tried really hard to retire in 2017. I thought, perfect, I'll just step away, I can go. Yeah, I couldn't. Because what happened was I kept having conversations with folks from the university. I had done a lot of work with students coming and doing internships at Sanofi. And what I found was universities are really good at the thing they do most of the time, and they're not very good at speaking the language of industry. And industry has a hard time understanding how to talk to academia. So, to be fair, it needed a good interface. And that's really what Forge is about, is thinking about how do we get down to what are the fundamental problems and how do we solve them in a way that is meaningful in a business setting. I have made over 150 angel investments, had more than 20 of them exit. I sit on the board of directors for the Desert Angels. I studied a lot of stuff. What's that? Oh, sorry, there was did science background, clinical pathology, also did a master's in MIS at Eller, did a master in legal studies at Rogers, and now I'm working on my doctorate in education at a school up in Tempe. And my focus is very much on, should be familiar to some of you. Go ahead and hit the next slide because it looks like it's resized anyway. Nifty, so the entrepreneurial mindsets, the skills that too often you say entrepreneurship, and everybody immediately says, oh, so the business school. No. In fact, it might have nothing to do with the business school. I mean, future orientation as self-reliance, is that taught at Eller? I don't think so. I mean, if it is, it's in, something that is very different. My point is, all of these are the skills you all need, we all need. And so that's really where I'm focusing, is thinking about those skills and how do we take those and predict what might be success down the road. So, all right, next, please. So this is kind of a snapshot of what my portfolio looks like. Sorry, I have to stand back and look at it too. I know you're not supposed to look at your slides, but what it's meant to tell you is that I have probably 2/3 of them I've done through something called AngelList. That is a crowdsourcing way to do angel investing. So there are syndicates led by different people like CATalayst, Jenny Rook, FG's Foundry Group, all of which they find opportunities and then they present them to angel investors like me. And then if I decide to invest, then I join on and I become part of their syndicate. And so what that's saying is that Zach has treated me best. I've had the best success with companies with Zach, but you'll see why. There's an outlier, and that's one of the ones I'll talk about today. There's also a little bit of misleading. So BioVerge is my own background being in biomedical and biotechnology. I've done a lot of my investing there. They used to be on AngelList, which now they are doing their own thing. So there's a little bit of both. But you'll see how medical devices comes up, has been relatively successful, and biotech right behind it. These are like exits, so investment multiple. How well have they done it? Coming back and exiting. And once again, you see this really aberrant VR, AR. Like I said, we'll get to it in a sec. All right, go for it. So the good, Memora Health sold, they actually did what they call as a partial buyout. So the founders had a major investor come in, say, well, we want to buy all of you. And the founder said, yeah, we're not ready yet. Okay, fine, we'll buy half of you. For a lot of us earlier investors, that's great, because what that means is that gives us some piece of return. Normally, we're making an investment, and it's sort of like waving the money goodbye for 7 to 10 years. So this was actually an opportunity to get some of it back and still have an investment in play. So half the equity is still there. We shall see, but at least for the initial part, well, it says 8.2, but as it says, about 5 and 8 after fees. Important part about why people do venture capital. It's profitable. There's this notion of 2 and 20, 2% management fee, 20% is basically taken off. So when a VC has a company exit, sell, whatever, the investor gets their money made whole. So they get whatever it was back. Everything beyond that, the VC gets 20% of. So it's a very good business if you're good at picking companies that are going to succeed. But it's also why, if you're trying to deal with patient capital and you don't know that you're going to necessarily have a high return, VC can be really painful because they've got to drive returns for their limited partners. McDonald's actually bought them to put AI into the drive-through to try to upsell customers as they were coming through. IBM liked it so much they bought it from McDonald's. So that was a real winner for Apprent anyway. It was 5.3 for us, which is above average as returns go for angel investing. Finless, okay, that's not actually an exit, but they just raised last year a $34 million Series B, which that's usually validation that they're moving along, that they're actually getting somewhere. And for those of you that are into sustainability and resilience, Finless is a plant-based fish alternative. So they produce a tuna that when you see the photos of it, you think it's tuna. It has actually fooled chefs who've taste tested it. And then IntoBio got acquired by SciEx. Same thing, they had different rounds with exits. So that was the good. That's like where you say, yes, see, this is why I'm doing this investing, because I got these things. Let's go to the next slide. This is the bad. So In this case, all of these companies have, if it says realized, it means they're done. If it says live, it means they've had to do some kind of recapitalization. So they went back out at lower terms than they had before. And you can see Bicycle, Hudson, yeah, there's some, basically whatever was invested, I have less of it now than I had when I started this process. And you'll also notice a little bit on the AI and health side of it. So that's kind of where I like to invest. All right, now let's go to the ugly. Straight zeros, except for Alavita, who it says live, but they're dead. They're a walking zombie. This is where, thank you very much, we have no money to hand you. Have a nice day. And that happens a lot. I would say of 20 investments, 14 of them go to zero, and then it's really up to the 6 to try to come up with some mixture that helps at least make back the total amount, and then ideally you get one real home run that takes you even further. So let's talk about one of those, and this is the one that is between me and you and not the camera. So one of my favorite plots, which is the ideas are cheap, execution is everything. That's the other paraphrase. What it says is lots of ideas. In fact, on the scale, 5,000 give or take ideas here at the raw idea stage. And for those of you who've either sat in on our student startup residency webinar or who are planning to, it's why we need you here. We need the things to be submitted that are further along, because it's just too easy to do the idea part. But once you kind of start to do some diligence, some thinking about it, some critical assessment, what a difference. But it takes those 5,000 ideas to get to maybe one successful solution. And that's the other part of this, is why it is a team sport in every sense. But that team is advisors, it's people who've been through this, who've made good and bad investments, and so on. So hopefully this is not new to any of you, but if it is, it's the world famous lean canvas. The whole idea of this is that if you're thinking about a concept, you should be able to address every one of those boxes eventually. Now, I'm not going to say you need to have an answer to them on day one, but you can see, like, have I defined a critical problem, and do I have a good solution for it? I see a lot of solutions running around in search of a problem, but they haven't necessarily found the right problem yet. Likewise, the value proposition. So is it worth investing in? Is it something that someone would see as valuable? And then the customer segments. So go ahead and hit the next one, Ben. It's awfully washed out. Yeah, I lost my drawing. My pen drawing around problem solution. So networks and resources in the white paper is the first section. Those are free. That's Forge. That's Startup Tucson if you're in the community, or Local First Arizona, or any of the other organizations that are out there that exist to try to help people get to problem solution and be able to really define that out. So let me turn it around the other way. If you don't yet have those defined, you better not be spending a penny on doing that. There are too many free and available resources out there for you to help you through that. Then in the middle, the unique value proposition is basically where I feel like you turn a corner to things like small business grants. SBA does all kinds of stuff, Community Investment Corporation, many entities, Growth Partners Arizona, they offer low or no interest loans to small businesses, or microlending, which is another term for friends and family. Like, are there other people you could go to for a small amount of money? We have a prototyping grant that probably nobody knows about. But for those who have a physical or virtual concept, we have funding available that, especially if you're working through CATalayst or in engineering, will support you through that next piece of it. That's precisely why it's there. It's to help with that, developing out the concept, the proof of concept, the value proposition. And then on the right, skip unfair advantage for a second, but customer segments and channels. This means I now know what my customer looks like, the person I'm selling it to, who I'm offering this to, how I'm going to get this in the hands of or find a person who's interested and willing to pay. That's where I see tools like crowdfunding and revenue-based financing. They're sort of two sides of the coin. Crowdfunding, many of you have probably heard of WeFunder or some of these other platforms. You know, equity crowdfunding is now an option, so I can, for a portion of my company, offer equity in it to people who are not accredited investors because it runs through a special thing called Reg CF, sorry, or revenue-based financing. My company is operating now, I am making some income. Well, rather than giving up equity, you go out to lenders who can put together a construction that ties what you're making to the loan. Again, all of these are covered in the white paper just as background of sort of where you might be in your progress and what you should be thinking about in terms of ways to get capital. You'll notice so far I haven't said a thing, I mean crowdfunding aside, about equity and venture and all of that. And that's really the point of everything I'm saying today. Because risk capital, that's the broad term for whether it's angel, VC, or other, only go there when you've got things like your customer acquisition costs, your hosting, if it's a revenue model, a lifetime value. Like if you don't know what CAC and LTV and those things are, then you probably don't want to be pitching risk capital. And I'm saying it like that because that's exactly my point. Those are the pieces of the puzzle that an investor is going to want to know. What's it going to cost you to get a customer? And how long are you going to keep them? And what are they going to be worth to you? Because as an investor, I'll go back to the Loom.ai, I could see where they could have a captive audience. People would go through the process of that, and then they'd just suddenly be long-term customers of that. Just as I thought the property managers for Castle, if I can sell or have 120 properties, I'm probably going to stick around. It's got that stickiness. Unfortunately, they never figured out margin. So while they had the stickiness piece, they could never do what they were doing for less than what it cost them to do it, which is a fundamental problem for a business. So all of this is to say all funding is not created equal. When I talk about investing, I really encourage people to make sure that they've exhausted other paths first. And even then, again, not all investors created equal. A VC has a return to provide to limited partners. Angels, for the most part, we're there not so much because we're hoping to get a big return. I mean, we're not going to be upset. But mainly it's because we want to try to help the founder. We want to advise, offer our expertise, offer our network, et cetera. But angel isn't great for everybody. Some people don't like how much angels want to get into things with them. They sort of are like, yeah, can you just write the check and leave me alone? Well, that's definitely not angel investor. So, I think recognize some things about what your style is, what your preferences are, and where you would want to be seeking capital down the road. And I think it's on the pitch, so should we take a moment for questions or?